The thousand-year war between the Hegemony Empire and the Coalition of Free Worlds has devastated entire star systems, with both sides locked in an endless stalemate that has consumed generations of warriors and resources, while Earth remains hidden in a remote spiral arm, deliberately maintaining radio silence and technological concealment as humanity secretly develops weapons and defenses far beyond what either warring faction could imagine. Captain Marcus Reynolds stands on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, the first and most advanced warship in Earth's hidden fleet, watching as the final preparations are made for humanity's first venture into the galactic conflict that has raged since before Earth's medieval period, knowing that both alien factions consider his home world nothing more than a primitive planet inhabited by barely spacefaring barbarians who pose no threat to anyone. Admiral Jake Morrison's final transmission echoes in Reynolds' mind as the Defiance powers up its revolutionary quantum drive systems that bend spacetime itself, the Admiral's words carrying the weight of humanity's survival. "They've been killing each other for a millennium while we've been preparing for this moment. Marcus, show them what happens when you underestimate Earth." The warship's hull, composed of metamaterials that can phase between dimensions, begins to shimmer as Lieutenant Emma Brooks runs final diagnostics on the gravitational manipulation weapons that could theoretically tear apart a moon, while Commander Tyler Hayes monitors the fusion reactors that generate more power than most alien space stations. His hands steady despite knowing that they're about to enter a war zone where ships the size of cities have been reduced to atomic dust in seconds. Dr. Rachel Stone reviews the psychological profiles of both alien factions, her research indicating that neither side has encountered a species quite like humanity, one that combines technological innovation with tactical unpredictability and an almost reckless willingness to take calculated risks that would terrify most civilized species. While the quantum communicators maintain their encrypted link to Earth's defense network where General Nathan cross coordinates with dozens of other hidden human vessels positioned throughout the galaxy, waiting for the signal that will announce humanity's entrance into galactic politics. The view screen displays the Kepler 442 system where a massive hegemony fleet of over 300 dreadnoughts is preparing to assault the Coalition's last major stronghold, a fortress world that has withstood siege for 30 years but cannot survive another full-scale assault. And Reynolds knows that this battle will serve as humanity's introduction to the galaxy, not as the primitive species both sides expect, but as the factor that will fundamentally alter the balance of power that has remained static for centuries. The Defiance drops out of quantum space at the edge of the system, its stealth systems immediately engaged as the crew observes the alien fleets through sensors so advanced they can detect individual life signs aboard ships light minutes away, watching as hegemony commanders prepare their plasma bombardment formations while Coalition defenders activate their energy shields in patterns that human analysts decoded months ago, neither side aware that their communications, tactics, and technological capabilities have been studied and catalogued by Earth's intelligence networks for over 50 years. Reynolds feels the weight of history as he realizes that humanity's survival depends not just on superior technology, but on the psychological impact of revealing that Earth has been watching, learning, and preparing while two galactic superpowers exhausted themselves in endless warfare, and that the primitive species they dismissed is about to demonstrate capabilities that will force both factions to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the balance of power in the galaxy. As the Defiance begins its approach toward the largest space battle in recorded history, carrying weapons that exist beyond the theoretical understanding of either warring faction and manned by a crew trained specifically to exploit the tactical weaknesses that emerge when civilizations become too comfortable with predictable warfare patterns. The Coalition frigate Resolute Dawn was dying in the void, its hull breached in 17 places as hegemony interceptors swarmed around it like metallic vultures, their plasma cannons systematically dismantling the ship's remaining defenses while Captain Marcus Reynolds watched from the Defiance's bridge, knowing that 23 Coalition survivors were trapped in a failing life support bubble that would collapse within minutes unless someone intervened. "Sir, we could decloak and disable those interceptors without revealing our full capabilities," Lieutenant Emma Brooks suggested, her fingers hovering over the gravitational pulse controls that could crush the enemy ships like tin cans, but Reynolds shook his head, understanding that their first action would set the tone for everything that followed, and a display of overwhelming force might trigger responses they weren't prepared to handle yet. Commander Tyler Hayes pulled up tactical projections showing how they could use their phase shift technology to appear directly between the Coalition ship and its attackers, creating a shield with their own hull while simultaneously launching rescue pods that could extract survivors faster than either faction thought possible. And Dr. Rachel Stone added that psychological profiles suggested both species would interpret such a maneuver as either supreme confidence or desperate foolishness, neither of which would immediately reveal Earth's true capabilities. The decision crystallized in Reynolds' mind as he watched a coalition officer on the dying ship's bridge making what appeared to be a final transmission to his family, the human captain recognizing the universal gesture of farewell that transcended species barriers, and he ordered the Defiance to drop stealth protocols and phase directly into the battle zone at coordinates that would position them perfectly to intercept incoming fire while deploying rescue systems that neither faction had ever encountered. The Hegemony pilots barely had time to register the appearance of an unknown vessel before their targeting computers failed to lock onto a ship that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its hull rippling between solid matter and something that defied their understanding of physics, while the coalition survivors watched in amazement as rescue pods materialized inside their ship through walls that remained completely intact, using matter phase technology that bypassed every known law of particle interaction. Reynolds activated the ship's communication array, broadcasting on frequencies that both factions used for formal military channels, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Hegemony forces, you will cease fire immediately and withdraw to minimum safe distance. This vessel and its survivors are now under our protection. The words chosen carefully to imply governmental backing without revealing which government, while the Defiance's defensive systems automatically deflected incoming plasma bolts using gravitational fields that bent the energy attacks back toward their sources with surgical precision. The Hegemony squadron leader, Admiral Vex Corian, found his instruments showing impossible readings as his most powerful weapons simply curved around the unknown ship like water around a stone, while his communications officer reported that their quantum encryption codes were being effortlessly decoded and responded to in real time, suggesting technological capabilities that exceeded even the most advanced Hegemony research facilities by several centuries. On the Coalition command frequency, Fleet Commander Sarah Martinez demanded identification from the mysterious vessel that had appeared with technology she couldn't classify, her tactical computers offering 12 different theories about the ship's origin but none that adequately explained how it could phase through matter while simultaneously maintaining perfect structural integrity under weapons fire that should have vaporized any known hull material. The Defiance completed its rescue operation in exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, extracting all Coalition survivors while simultaneously jamming every recording device and sensor array within a 10 light-minute radius, ensuring that neither faction could obtain detailed scans of human technology, and Reynolds prepared to implement the next phase of their plan as both alien fleets began converging on their position with reinforcements that included some of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. Unknown vessel, identify your faction affiliation and technological origin immediately, Admiral Corian transmitted on all frequencies, his voice carrying the imperial authority of someone accustomed to commanding respect from 100 conquered species, while Commander Martinez simultaneously broadcast her own demands for information, both military leaders struggling to understand how a single ship could demonstrate capabilities that suggested either faction had developed secret weapons that could revolutionize the entire war. Reynolds exchanged glances with his senior staff, knowing that their response would determine whether humanity entered galactic politics as mysterious allies, dangerous unknowns, or something else entirely, while the Defiance's quantum computers calculated probability matrices for 17 different first contact scenarios that Dr. Stone had developed based on decades of studying both civilizations from the shadows. Reynolds opened a channel to both fleets simultaneously, his voice calm despite the 37 Hegemony dreadnoughts that had just dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect combat formation designed to overwhelm any single target through concentrated firepower, while Admiral Corian's reinforcements spread across a three-dimensional battle grid that had proven effective against Coalition forces for over 2 centuries. This is Captain Reynolds of the vessel Defiance. We claim no allegiance to either faction in your conflict, but we will not tolerate attacks on vessels under our protection, he transmitted, watching as both fleets struggled to understand how his ship could maintain position directly between them while somehow avoiding the targeting locks of over 400 weapons systems that should have been able to destroy any known vessel in the galaxy. Admiral Corian's response came swift and predictable, his imperial conditioning unable to accept the existence of a neutral party in what the Hegemony considered their rightful conquest of Coalition space, and he ordered his strike force to demonstrate the price of interfering with Imperial operations by unleashing a coordinated barrage that would have reduced most space stations to scattered atoms. The Defiance's defense systems activated automatically as plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors converged on their position from multiple vectors, but instead of taking evasive action or raising conventional shields, The ship simply ceased to exist in normal spacetime for exactly 2.3 seconds before reappearing behind the hegemony formation with its weapon systems fully charged and targeting solutions already locked onto every enemy vessel. Lieutenant Brooks initiated the gravitational lance sequence, and what happened next violated every known principle of physics as streams of pure gravitational force tore through the vacuum of space, creating temporary black holes that lasted just long enough to collapse 3 hegemony dreadnoughts into points of infinite density before dispersing harmlessly, while the remaining enemy ships watched their most advanced shields fail to even register the attack as a threat until their hull plating began compressing under forces that existed outside normal dimensional boundaries. Commander Hayes activated the quantum disruptor array, and the fundamental forces holding together atomic structures in the hegemony ships began to fluctuate wildly, causing enemy vessels to phase randomly between dimensions as their crews experienced the terrifying sensation of existing in multiple realities simultaneously, their distress calls creating a cacophony of panic across communication channels that both fleets monitored in stunned silence. Dr. Stone observed the psychological impact on both alien crews through their biometric emissions, noting that the hegemony pilots were experiencing levels of existential terror typically associated with encounters with cosmic phenomena beyond their understanding, while Coalition observers struggled to process evidence that suggested the mysterious ship could manipulate the basic laws that govern their universe. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 8 minutes and 41 seconds, during which the Defiance systematically disabled 29 hegemony warships using weapons that seemed to operate on principles that made their technology look like Bronze Age tools in comparison, while never once firing what either faction would recognize as conventional armaments, instead demonstrating the ability to alter fundamental constants of reality within localized spacetime regions. Admiral Corian's flagship, the massive dreadnought Imperial Dominance, found its quantum computers failing to calculate basic navigation as the space around it began experiencing temporal fluctuations that aged different sections of the ship at different rates, creating structural stresses that no engineering system could compensate for, while his weapons officers reported that their targeting systems couldn't lock onto a vessel that appeared to exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Fleet Commander Martinez watched the engagement through long-range sensors from her position near the Coalition Fortress world, her tactical staff providing running commentary that became increasingly incoherent as they attempted to classify weapons effects that their science couldn't explain, while her intelligence officers frantically searched databases for any reference to technology that could manipulate gravitational constants, temporal flow, and dimensional barriers as easily as adjusting thruster output. The surviving hegemony vessels began retreating in complete disorder as Admiral Corian transmitted an urgent priority message to Imperial High Command, reporting contact with an unknown force possessing capabilities that suggested either the discovery of entirely new physics or the intervention of a civilization so advanced that the current galactic war was essentially meaningless, while the Defiance maintained position between the fleets, its hull shimmering with energies that sensors couldn't classify but that somehow conveyed an impression of vast, restrained power waiting to be unleashed. Reynolds studied the tactical display showing both fleets withdrawing to what they considered safe distances, knowing that neither faction understood they were witnessing humanity's deliberately limited demonstration designed to establish credibility without revealing the full scope of Earth's capabilities. While quantum communicators carried encrypted reports to General Cross confirming that the first phase of contact had proceeded exactly according to plan, with both alien civilizations now desperate to understand and potentially acquire the technologies that had just redefined their understanding of what was possible in warfare. Within 6 hours of the engagement, both galactic superpowers had redirected their most advanced intelligence networks toward solving the mystery of the Defiance, with hegemony analysts reviewing every database spanning 3 million inhabited worlds while Coalition cryptographers worked frantically to decode the quantum signatures that lingered in space where the unknown vessel had demonstrated impossible technologies. Admiral Corian found himself in the unprecedented position of reporting to Imperial High Command that a single ship had neutralized an entire strike force without using any recognizable weapons technology, while his scientists struggled to explain sensor readings that suggested the enemy vessel could manipulate fundamental forces that their civilization hadn't even discovered existed, leading to emergency sessions where the Empire's greatest minds debated whether they were facing a secret Coalition superweapon or evidence of an entirely unknown species. Fleet Commander Martinez received similar pressure from Coalition High Council members who demanded explanations for technologies that seemed to violate basic physics, her intelligence officers presenting 17 different theories ranging from dimensional travelers to time-displaced future humans, none of which adequately explained how any civilization could develop such capabilities without leaving traces in the galactic communication networks that both factions monitored constantly. The Defiance maintained position at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, its stealth systems engaged but its presence unmistakable as both fleets established perimeters at respectful distances while their commanders prepared diplomatic overtures designed to either recruit or neutralize what both sides now recognized as a potential game-changing force in their thousand-year conflict. Dr. Stone monitored the flood of communications traffic as both civilizations attempted to establish contact protocols, noting that hegemony messages emphasized imperial authority and offers of territorial rewards, while coalition transmissions focused on shared democratic values and mutual defense agreements, neither approach demonstrating any understanding that they might be dealing with representatives of a civilization that considered both factions equally primitive. Reynolds received formal diplomatic requests from Admiral Corian offering technology exchanges and alliance opportunities that would grant the mysterious ship's controllers significant territory within hegemony space, while Commander Martinez simultaneously transmitted coalition proposals for mutual assistance pacts and shared research initiatives, both leaders clearly desperate to prevent their enemies from acquiring whatever advantages the unknown vessel represented. Lieutenant Brooks tracked 17 separate hegemony intelligence probes attempting to analyze the quantum residue left by their dimensional phase technology, while Commander Hayes observed coalition scouts trying to backtrack the Defiance's approach vector using gravitational distortion analysis. Both efforts doomed to failure because human technology operated on principles that neither faction had developed sufficient understanding to even recognize, much less trace or duplicate. The psychological impact on both military hierarchies became apparent as emergency sessions convened on dozens of command ships, with hegemony strategists calculating that their empire's expansion plans would need complete revision if unknown forces possessed technology capable of neutralizing their most advanced fleets, while coalition military planners desperately tried to determine whether the mysterious ship represented salvation from inevitable defeat or a new threat that could destroy them just as easily as it had dismantled hegemony forces. Dr. Rachel Stone compiled behavioral analysis reports showing that both alien civilizations were experiencing what she termed technological shock syndrome, a condition that occurred when spacefaring species encountered capabilities so far beyond their understanding that it forced complete reconsideration of their place in the galactic hierarchy, often leading to either aggressive attempts at acquisition or defensive preparations against perceived threats that couldn't be quantified or predicted. Reynolds made the calculated decision to respond to both diplomatic overtures simultaneously, broadcasting a message that acknowledged their communications while revealing nothing about human origins or intentions. We appreciate both factions' interest in establishing relations, however. We require demonstration that any potential agreements would contribute to ending the destructive conflict that has devastated this region of space for over a millennium. The response triggered immediate activity across both fleets as military leaders realized that the unknown force was not only technologically superior but also possessed detailed knowledge of their war's history and duration, suggesting either long-term observation or access to intelligence networks that both sides considered absolutely secure, while their xenobiologists began developing profiles for a species that combined advanced technology with apparent interest in galactic peace. Admiral Corian convened emergency strategy sessions with his most trusted advisors, knowing that imperial doctrine demanded either subjugation or destruction of any force that challenged hegemony supremacy, but recognizing that conventional approaches would be suicidal against opponents who could manipulate spacetime itself, while Fleet Commander Martinez faced similar dilemmas as coalition leadership demanded she determine whether these mysterious protectors could be trusted with the survival of free worlds that had resisted imperial conquest for generations. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force both civilizations to confront the possibility that their thousand-year war had been observed, analyzed, and judged by entities whose technological capabilities made their most advanced weapons look like primitive tools, while the Defiance prepared for the next phase of humanity's carefully orchestrated introduction to galactic politics. The uneasy standoff shattered when hegemony reinforcements arrived in overwhelming numbers, with Admiral Vex Corian leading a massive fleet of over 800 warships including the dreaded super-dreadnought Eternal Conquest, a vessel the size of a small moon that had single-handedly destroyed entire coalition star systems, while Fleet Commander Martinez found herself commanding barely 200 ships in a desperate defensive formation around the fortress world that represented the coalition's last major stronghold in this sector of space. Reynolds watched from the Defiance's bridge as both fleets maneuvered into positions that military historians would later recognize as the largest space engagement in recorded galactic history, with hegemony forces deploying in the classic hammer of dominion formation that concentrated overwhelming firepower against specific points while coalition defenders arranged themselves in the shield wall pattern that had saved democratic worlds for 3 centuries, neither side aware that human military analysts had studied and wargamed both tactical approaches for decades. The battle erupted with the fury of colliding galaxies as thousands of plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes and gravitational disruptors lit up the void between worlds, creating a light show visible from neighboring star systems while Admiral Corian pressed his advantage in numbers and firepower, knowing that this engagement would either secure hegemony victory in the sector or demonstrate that coalition resistance had developed new capabilities that threatened imperial expansion. Lieutenant Emma Brooks monitored the engagement through sensors that tracked individual projectiles across light minutes of space, her tactical computers identifying the precise moment when coalition shields would fail under concentrated bombardment, while Commander Tyler Hayes calculated that conventional intervention would require the Defiance to choose sides in a conflict where humanity's interests lay in ending the war entirely rather than determining its victor. Dr. Rachel Stone observed the psychological profiles of both fleet commanders through quantum-encrypted biomonitoring, noting that Admiral Corian exhibited the confidence of someone accustomed to inevitable victory while Commander Martinez displayed the desperate determination of a leader making humanity's last stand, neither realizing that their behavior patterns had been studied and predicted by Earth's xenopsychology departments for over 50 years. The turning point came when Reynolds made a decision that violated every principle of conventional space warfare by ordering the Defiance to position itself directly in the center of the battle zone, not to support either side but to demonstrate tactical concepts that neither faction had imagined possible, beginning with the activation of temporal displacement fields that allowed the ship to exist in multiple moments simultaneously while maintaining perfect coordination between past and future positions. The effect on both fleets was immediate and catastrophic to their understanding of reality as weapons fire passed harmlessly through spaces where the Defiance had been seconds earlier while the ship appeared to attack targets from positions it wouldn't reach for several minutes, creating causal paradoxes that forced both alien civilizations to confront the possibility that linear time wasn't as fixed as their physics suggested. Commander Hayes initiated the Dimensional Cascade Protocol, and suddenly the battlefield existed in 17 different spatial dimensions simultaneously, with the Defiance shifting between realities to position itself for attacks that came from directions that didn't exist in normal spacetime, while both alien fleets found their targeting computers failing to track an enemy that could approach from the past, present, and future simultaneously. Admiral Corian watched in growing horror as his most experienced battle commanders reported that their tactical computers couldn't process enemy movements that violated fundamental laws of causality, while coalition observers struggled to understand how a single ship could engage hundreds of targets across multiple dimensions while somehow avoiding damage from weapons that should have been inescapable at such close range. The engagement reached its climax when the Defiance demonstrated gravitational warfare on a scale that neither faction had imagined possible, creating localized spacetime distortions that caused enemy ships to experience different rates of temporal flow, aging some vessels decades and seconds while slowing others to near standstill, effectively removing them from the battle without destroying them while proving that humanity could manipulate the fundamental structure of reality as a tactical weapon. Dr. Stone recorded the exact moment when both fleet commanders simultaneously realized that their thousand-year war had become meaningless in the face of technologies that could rewrite the basic rules governing their universe, their bioreadings showing the cognitive shock of military leaders forced to accept that their most advanced strategies were primitive compared to capabilities that treated space and time as variables to be adjusted rather than constants to be endured. Reynolds opened communication channels to both fleets as the Defiance maintained position at the gravitational center of the engagement zone, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated the power to end their war instantly. Admiral Corian, Fleet Commander Martinez, you will order immediate ceasefire and withdraw your forces to minimum safe distance while we discuss terms for ending this conflict permanently, the words accompanied by a demonstration that created a stable wormhole connecting the two fleet positions, allowing both commanders to see each other's faces across impossible distances while understanding that humanity could control the very fabric of spacetime itself. The ceasefire lasted exactly 17 minutes before Admiral Corian's pride overwhelmed his tactical judgment, leading him to interpret humanity's demonstration as a bluff that could be called through overwhelming numerical superiority, and he transmitted orders to the Eternal Conquest to deploy its planet-killing weaponry against the mysterious vessel that had humiliated the hegemony's finest battle fleet. Reynolds anticipated this response based on psychological profiles indicating that Imperial commanders would view negotiation as weakness, and he activated quantum communicators that sent predetermined signals across 17 star systems simultaneously, triggering a revelation that would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power forever as humanity dropped its thousand-year masquerade of primitive isolation. The first human vessel to decloak was the UES Retribution under Captain Diana Walsh, materializing directly behind Corian's flagship with weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto the superdreadnought's primary reactor cores, while the UES Vindication commanded by Captain Robert Chen appeared above the Coalition fortress world, its advanced medical bays already preparing to receive casualties from what both alien factions had assumed would be their final battle. Across the galaxy, 47 additional human warships simultaneously dropped their stealth protocols in perfect coordination, each vessel positioned at strategic choke points that controlled hyperlane access between major hegemony and coalition territories, demonstrating that Earth had been conducting covert surveillance and positioning operations for decades while both civilizations exhausted themselves in feudal warfare. Admiral Corian's tactical displays erupted with contact warnings as his sensors detected human vessels at Rigel Station, the Centauri Gate, Vega Prime, and dozens of other critical locations that represented the infrastructure backbone of both galactic civilizations, while Fleet Commander Martinez received similar reports showing that humanity had achieved strategic positioning that would allow them to control interstellar commerce, military movement, and communication between every major world. In known space, Captain Walsh transmitted from the Retribution with the calm professionalism of someone executing a plan years in the making. Admiral Corian, your vessel's reactor containment is currently being held stable by our gravitational field manipulators. Any attempt to fire weapons will result in immediate cascade failure and total destruction of your flagship. While simultaneously Captain Chen addressed coalition forces with offers of advanced medical technology that could heal their wounded faster than their own doctors thought possible. Dr. Stone monitored the psychological impact as both alien civilizations confronted evidence that humanity had been observing their war from positions of strategic dominance, noting that hegemony commanders were experiencing cognitive dissonance as their imperial worldview collapsed under the realization that Earth had been treating them as subjects of study rather than threats to be feared, while coalition leaders struggled with the implications of receiving aid from protectors who possessed technology that could have ended their suffering centuries ago. The revelation of Earth's true capabilities continued as human ships demonstrated technologies that made their earlier displays look primitive by comparison, with the UES Sovereign under Captain Michael Torres creating stable hyperspace corridors that connected distant battle zones instantly, while the UES Guardian commanded by Captain Jennifer Hayes deployed medical nanobots that began repairing coalition vessels from the inside out, their crews watching in amazement as hull breaches sealed themselves and damaged systems rebuilt automatically. Reynolds coordinated the global revelation through quantum-encrypted channels that allowed all human commanders to act with perfect synchronization, their movements demonstrating the kind of strategic patience that could only come from civilizations that planned operations across multiple centuries while maintaining absolute operational security against enemies who never suspected they were being systematically outmaneuvered. Admiral Corian found his empire's communications networks flooded with reports of human vessels appearing at every major military installation, trade hub, and defensive position across hegemony space, while his intelligence officers frantically tried to calculate how any species could have achieved such comprehensive penetration of territories that the Empire considered absolutely secure, their analysis indicating that humanity must have been preparing for this moment since before the current war began. Fleet Commander Martinez received simultaneous offers of assistance from human ships positioned throughout Coalition space, each vessel demonstrating capabilities that could have ended specific battles, saved particular worlds, or prevented catastrophic defeats that had shaped the course of their thousand-year struggle, leading her to realize that Earth had been watching every coalition victory and defeat while possessing the power to intervene at any moment they chose. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation as Reynolds prepared to reveal the final phase of humanity's plan, with Earth's fleet positioned to demonstrate that they could defeat both galactic superpowers simultaneously if necessary, while offering terms for peace that would establish humanity as the dominant force in a galaxy that had never suspected their existence until this moment of carefully orchestrated revelation. The peace negotiations collapsed within hours as both Admiral Corian and Fleet Commander Martinez made the fatal miscalculation that their combined fleets could overwhelm humanity's revealed forces through sheer numerical superiority, leading to emergency communications between traditional enemies who agreed to suspend their thousand-year war temporarily in order to eliminate what they now perceived as an existential threat to both civilizations. Reynolds had anticipated this response through Dr. Stone's psychological modeling, which predicted that both alien cultures would interpret Earth's technological demonstrations as aggressive posturing rather than restraint, their military mindsets unable to comprehend that humanity could have conquered both empires decades ago if that had been their intention, instead choosing to reveal themselves only when the Galactic War threatened to expand into sectors containing developing civilizations that deserved protection from imperial ambitions. The coordinated assault began at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time when over 1,500 hegemony and coalition vessels launched simultaneous attacks against human positions across 17 star systems, their commanders believing that concentrated firepower could overcome technological advantages through tactics that had proven effective against previous unknown enemies throughout their respective histories of conquest and liberation. Captain Diana Walsh aboard the Retribution calmly reported incoming enemy formations to General Nathan Cross at Fleet Command, her voice betraying no concern as she observed weapons approaches that would have terrified most spacefaring species, while Captain Robert Chin transmitted tactical analysis showing that both alien factions were employing battle doctrines that human military theorists had studied and developed countermeasures for during decades of covert observation and strategic planning. The battle that followed lasted exactly 91 minutes and redefined what both alien civilizations understood about warfare technology and their place in a galaxy that had suddenly become much larger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined, beginning when human vessels demonstrated their ability to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously while coordinating attacks across vast distances through quantum entanglement networks that operated faster than lightspeed. Communication. Admiral Corian watched in growing horror as his most powerful weapons simply passed through human ships that phased between realities at will, while Fleet Commander Martinez discovered that coalition targeting computers couldn't lock onto vessels that existed in temporal flux states, aging and reversing their development cycles and patterns that made conventional ballistics calculations meaningless, both commanders realizing that they were fighting an enemy that had mastered forces their civilizations hadn't even discovered. Captain Michael Torres aboard the Sovereign initiated the dimensional cascade that allowed human forces to attack from directions that didn't exist in normal spacetime, while Captain Jennifer Hayes commanded gravitational manipulation systems that turned enemy formations against themselves by creating localized spacetime distortions where Allied vessels experienced different rates of temporal flow, causing their own weapons fire to arrive before they pulled their triggers in causality loops that left both alien fleets shooting at positions their enemies had occupied in alternate timelines. The turning point came when Reynolds authorized deployment of humanity's ultimate demonstration of restrained power, ordering all human vessels to create a stable hyperspace bubble around the entire engagement zone that effectively removed the battle from normal spacetime while allowing both alien fleets to observe their complete helplessness against technologies that could manipulate the fundamental laws governing their universe as easily as adjusting thruster controls. Dr. Stone recorded the precise moment when both Admiral Corian and Fleet Commander Martinez simultaneously realized that their combined civilizations were essentially primitive compared to entities that could treat stellar engineering, dimensional warfare, and temporal manipulation as routine tactical options, their bioreadings showing the cognitive shock of military leaders forced to accept that humanity had been protecting them from threats they couldn't even comprehend while allowing them to fight their meaningless war until they were ready to accept galactic citizenship under Earth's guidance. Inside the hyperspace isolation field, Reynolds opened communication channels to both fleets while human vessels maintained perfect formation around their defeated enemies, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had just demonstrated that humanity could have ended both civilizations at any point during the past millennium but had chosen patience and preparation instead of conquest. Admiral Corian, Fleet Commander Martinez, you have now seen what happens when Earth decides to take direct action in galactic affairs, but understand that our goal has never been to replace your civilizations with our own, rather to guide both species toward the peaceful coexistence that will be necessary when truly dangerous threats emerge from sectors you haven't yet explored. The implications of his words settled over both alien commanders as they realized that humanity's intervention represented not conquest but protection, and that the 1,000-year war that had defined their civilizations was about to end not through victory or defeat, but through the emergence of guardians who had been watching over the galaxy while waiting for the moment when guidance could replace conflict as the dominant force in interstellar relations.